Hello, Facebook Live community. It's Martina Hughes, your love, intimacy, and relationship mentor. And it's Monday night again. Tonight's topic is deepening in relationships. So I'm going to share with you tonight 3 tips for deepening in relationship. And along the way, if you have any questions, feel free to pop your questions into the chat box. I'm happy to answer any questions. I am still in Bali and the Wi-Fi has been a little bit patchy here today. So if I drop out, I will connect back in as soon as possible. Great, there's some wonderful heaps of people joining us. Hi, Adam, Melanie, Siobhan, Glenn, Shelley. Lovely to see so many familiar names on the list. So the first thing I wanted to share about deepening in relationship tonight is actually to share about knowing who you are. Because I find that quite often people go into relationships for the wrong reasons. People go into relationships wanting the other person to validate them, wanting the other person to make them feel good about themselves. But if we're not comfortable in our own skin, then it's very difficult to ever feel comfortable in a relationship. So being comfortable in our own skin is about being comfortable expressing who we are, being comfortable with our vulnerability, being comfortable with our strengths, being comfortable with our values and what's important to us. And if we're not comfortable with who we are and what it is that's a value in our lives, the thing that I've often seen happen is that people get busy then trying to change the other person. So just to break that down a little bit, if I'm uncomfortable with me, I'll also be uncomfortable with the person I'm in a relationship with. And then I try and change that person. Then I try and make them into someone who will make me comfortable. But ultimately, if I'm uncomfortable in my own skin, that will remain constant. So I need to know who I am. I need to know what it is that I stand for in the world, what it is that's important to me. Otherwise, there's no chance of actually feeling a peaceful, harmonious connection with the other person. Maybe just say yes or comment in the box if this is making sense to you. I feel like this is really one of the big traps in relationship and something that trips people up a lot. Also, the other thing that I feel is important is having a life that feels good to you, whether you're single or in a relationship. Because if you're dependent on the other person, if you have to be in a relationship to feel good, that creates a lot of pressure on the connection. We've got a few people waving, thumbs up. Thank you for the feedback. I had a hello from Lee and a very true from Glenn. Thank you. It's good to feel your feedback. It's an interesting forum, this Facebook Live. I'm still getting familiar with it. Thanks, Emily, for saying hi. So if your life is a life where you feel happy, you feel at ease and at peace in your own skin, and you're happy to be single or you're happy to be in a relationship, then there's a much greater chance of harmony and flow in your life. If you need the other person to fill a gap in your life, then that creates pressure and will often push the other person away. Hi, Katie. Katie says, sounds like great guidance. Imogen says, thumbs up. Awesome. Great to feel you all here. So in order to be comfortable with who you are, sometimes we need to get uncomfortable first. And this is where I think personal development often and spiritual development can let us down a little bit, because there can be a desire to only feel the good stuff. There can be a desire to always feel happy. And if we always are only looking for the good stuff or to only feel happy, then our growth and our development becomes a little stunted. But if we're willing to go to the uncomfortable places, if we're willing to feel the things that are hard to feel, if we're willing to have difficult conversations, then we're much more likely to feel confident and comfortable in our own skin. And then having that kind of confidence and comfort in our own skin changes the way we connect with others. And so then that leads into my next point. And having worked with, I would say, thousands and thousands of couples over the last 13 years, this is something that I've seen a lot, is that people go into relationships trying to change the other person. And when you try and change the other person, it comes from that place of not being happy with yourself. It comes from that place of wanting the other person to be a particular way so that you can be happy. So whoever you're in a relationship with, I suggest that you ask yourself this question, whether it's a current or a future relationship: can you grow in love, trust, and connection with this man or woman if they were to stay the same? If this person and you, if you both stay just the same, can you see a possibility for you growing in love, trust, and connection without changing each other? Because if your love, if your growth is conditional on the other person being different, is conditional on the other person showing up differently or acting differently, then it will always be a difficult connection. It also doesn't feel good. I know the times in my life when I've felt, whether it's been a girlfriend or an intimate partner or a teacher, whenever I've felt somebody trying actively to change me, or looking down on my behavior, or looking down on my communication or my way of being in the world, or disapproving of the way I process things emotionally, whenever I've felt that sense of judgment, scorn, or actively trying to change me, there's a part inside of me that contracts. There's a part inside of me that closes down, because my desire is to open and to blossom. There's somebody standing over me going, that's not good enough. You should speak clearer. That's not good enough. You should look more radiant. Then that, of course, is not going to feel good. Can people relate to what I'm saying about how it feels when somebody else is actively trying to change you, or perhaps judging or looking down on the way you show up in the world? Devaji says, there is a difference between changing someone, boundaries, goals, and growth, isn't there? Definitely, definitely. Of course, boundaries are part of knowing ourselves. We can have boundaries and say, that's not okay for me, without going into changing the person. For example, if a partner is If a partner's constantly dumping emotions, dumping anger, or behaving in ways that feel yuck or feel terrible to you, you can have a boundary and say, I'm not going to be on the receiving end of that anymore. So you can have a very clear boundary without changing the other person. Changing the other person is getting into the mode of, you shouldn't do that with your anger. Feel the difference in that, Devaji. It's like boundaries is different to changing somebody. Changing somebody is saying your behavior is not okay and you have to change it for me to love you. Whereas boundaries is knowing what's acceptable and what's okay for me. Stuart says this is very strongly felt at work and in office politics as well. Definitely, definitely. We can lift somebody up, we can support them to feel better, or we can, look over their shoulders and micromanage them. And of course, only one of those two things will have somebody open and blossom. Robert says it is natural in the human brain to contract in the face of judgment. Definitely, definitely. So it's disempowering when we're in the mode of trying to change somebody. If you're in a relationship where two people are committed to growth, you will actively grow and change together, but you will grow and change out of love. You will grow and change out of support and empowerment, rather than out of making each other feel small or belittling each other or putting each other down. There's a big difference in that kind of growth. And it's not about telling the other person how they should be or how they should show up in the world. It's leaving the other person space so that they feel free to be all of who they are. Because whenever we feel free to be all of who we are, we relax. And when we relax, then there's much more room for growth and opening to happen in our lives. So, as I said, the first point was about knowing yourself. The second point is about accepting the other person. And I know for me, when I was younger, I was very, very busy as a young woman trying to change the people I was in relationship with, because I felt like if I could change them, then I would feel better, then they would feel better, and then we'd have a better relationship. But all of my attempts to change the other person, it was exhausting for me, it was exhausting for them, and it was a constant lose-lose game. Once I realized the value of accepting the person that I'm with, accepting the person that I love, then I noticed a whole lot more relaxation and growth and change happen in relationship. Maybe just say yes if you can relate to that, about how maybe you've seen yourself grow more when you felt accepted. Maybe you've seen your partner grow more in the face of acceptance. And of course, the same thing could be applied to your children. If you're constantly criticizing your children, they'll shrink. But if you accept them and love them, there's space for them to open, to bloom, and to really blossom into who they are. The other thing that happens when we're busy trying to change the other person, there's no possibility of going deep in the relationship. If we try and change the other person, we always stay on the surface. There's this constant back and forth, back and forth. Whereas when we accept somebody, there's a possibility to go deeper, to go deeper. And there's also that energy of being more deeply rooted in our own body, which then encourages more depth overall in the relationship. So trying to change somebody, it's like it stays superficial. But if we want to go deep, we need to be able to show up some days in our discomfort, some days in times when we might be going, that really doesn't feel good for me. So we can still be accepting somebody and having those kind of boundaries where we say, this doesn't feel good, this hurts. When we're disconnected like this, it hurts. When we haven't had enough intimacy in our relationship, I feel sad, I feel alone. So we can share how we feel without actually trying to change the other person. So Robert says it comes down to whether the relationship is going to get its yah-yahs from the fight or flight side of the brain, which putting each other down guarantees, along with adrenal fatigue, or whether the relationship is going to frolic in relaxation, which is the world of co-empowered teamwork and creativity. Definitely, I wholeheartedly agree with that, Robert. And when we are in fight or flight mode, then there's very little chance of going deep, because we're simply in management and control mode, kind of living on the surface, trying to hold it all together. Stuart says, is it always about accepting ourselves, including our reactions to other people? Definitely. I mean, we need to be able to look at, where is it that we're not accepting ourselves? Where is it that we're rejecting parts of ourselves or projecting who we are onto the other person? And showing up in our relationships to have the vulnerable conversations, even times when, I know in my relationship with Rod, there'll be times when I'm not clear about what I'm feeling, but just showing up and saying to him at times, I feel sad, or I feel disconnected, or I'm not sure what's going on at the moment. Even just sharing that builds connection, and it gives me the chance to say, this is what's alive for me. And equally, it will give him the chance to say, yeah, this is what's going on for me. So it helps creating an open dialogue and really accepting ourselves in its most simple form. It's accepting how we feel, and then in a relationship being able to share that more fully and honestly. We have Sufio saying absolutely, Imogen, yes. Emily Claire, what do you believe about intuition in relationships? I'll come back to that one. That's a great question. It's also quite a big question, so I'll come back to that, Emily. Lee says growth from love takes so little effort and happens quickly. That is so, so true. That's a great quote, Lee. And yeah, definitely something to live by, is that when we're loved, growth it's effortless and it's quick. And there's no pressure in it. There's a sense of it just happening because we're like flowers. We want to blossom. We want to open. And that's true for men and women. I've seen men and women flourish in the space of a loving relationship. To come back to Emily's question about intuition, of course, we always have our own intuition. Men and women have capacity for intuition for our own lives, but also about the connection with our partner. And we can often be highly intuitive about what is going on in our partner's lives. We can share those intuitions in such a way that the other person is still free to take it on board or free to leave it. So there'll be times that I might feel things for Rod that feel like they're coming from my intuition, but I also might not be 100% sure. I might be, maybe that's intuition, maybe it's coming from my fears, maybe it's coming from my projections. But what I will do is just go to Rod and say, hey, this came up, I think it's my intuition, just wanted to share it with you, and maybe you can tell me if it lands for you. Most of the time he'll be like, oh yeah, that does feel true. If he says no, it doesn't, then I'll just leave it. So again, it's using my intuition to share things with him, but also leaving him free about what he does with my intuition. Equally, he will come to me at times and he'll share things that he's intuited, and there'll be moments where I'm like, yeah, that's so spot on. I totally feel that, and that's absolutely happening for me. And then there'll be other days where I go, oh, I'm not really sure, I'm not feeling it. And then maybe in a week's time, I'll go, oh yeah, actually, you're right about that. Yeah, that is what was happening. I didn't feel like it was true back then, but now I can see where it is. So intuition's really important, and you can share your intuition without going into changing the other person or trying to change them. The third point that I wanted to mention for tonight is having an intention for your relationship. I know in the world we live in today, relationships have changed a lot. And so if we went back 40 or even 50 years, most people went into relationships to have a house, to have a family, with that sense of growing old, raising children together, and all those things which are really beautiful. In today's world, people are not so much having children, or not so much interested in buying houses, or people might have already done those things and they're in a second or third significant relationship. And so if there's no intention for the relationship, then it's kind of open to whatever happens. And there's an element of surrender that is good and healthy in our lives. But let's say if I got in the car tomorrow and I just started driving and I'm in Bali and I don't know where I'm going, it would be a bit pointless just driving aimlessly around in Bali, right? And even if I was at home, eventually I'd start to feel like my time was being wasted if I was just driving around aimlessly. But generally, if I'm going to drive somewhere, I will set an intention. Okay, I'm going to go to the beach. I'm going to go to the supermarket. I'm going to go visit a friend. Equally, when we start up businesses, we develop our business plans and business goals, and we know where we want our business to go. But quite often in relationship, people don't sit down and work out where it is they're going together. And this can be a cause of much destructive energy in a relationship, particularly when you have two powerful people coming into a relationship together. Two powerful people in a relationship will generate a lot of energy. And if you're enjoying a deep and fulfilling sexual union, there's going to be a lot of sexual energy being activated. And if that energy, if that loving connection is not being channeled towards how you want to show up in your life, if it's not being channeled towards the direction of the relationship, that energy comes out in destructive ways. And this has happened for me in the past when I haven't been clear in the intention for my relationship. The generation of all that strong energy in a relationship has led to a lot of chaos and fighting and destruction. Stuart's just asked me a question. What about a more open intention, such as to be the most loving that I can be in this relationship? Awesome, beautiful intention, Stuart. Your intention doesn't have to be to have a house and have children. Like that, just use that as like a more traditional and common intention. So to give you an example, Rod and I, our intention for our relationship is that our relationship is the container for our sexual and spiritual growth. So we know that everything we're doing in our relationship is to support our sexual and spiritual growth. So even the decision to come on holiday in Bali, which was actually Rod's decision and something that he chose and organized for both of us, but there's a sense that coming away and having this time together supports another layer in our growth and in our journey together. Us working together in the ways that we're doing, which is incredibly beautiful and empowering for both of us. Working together also supports our spiritual and sexual growth because we get to see each other reflected through the work we're doing, through the ways that we share and create spaces for other people. Robert says, if you don't know where you're going, it's unlikely you'll get there. So true, Robert. Wholeheartedly agree on that. So intention is really important and it's often overlooked. And I do feel that not Emily saying congratulations again, by the way. It's very exciting. I'm very, very happy to be engaged. You can probably see this is my engagement ring that Rod bought for me. It's a tanzanite, which is a really powerful stone for spiritual work. So again, even the ring aligns with the intention for our relationship and both of our intentions for our lives. And it's surrounded by some beautiful diamonds as well. So even what I've noticed in Rod and I making the commitment to get engaged, that supports the deepening of our relationship. There's this sense that previously we knew that we had chosen each other, but now getting engaged, there's this stronger commitment to our love. There's this stronger commitment to saying, yes, we're in this journey together. We're both so committed to growth, to transformation, to living the best version of ourselves as possible. And I know that for me, the more I shine, the more I live the best version of Martina, the more I inspire and invite Rod to be the best version of himself. So that's another way in which our intention plays out. Lee says he's experienced that he's not truly in control of anything. The intention that he carries is loose and typically values-based. Some great relationships, experiences, and aha moments have come from that, and some learning opportunities too. And that's very truly, life for me is always a balance of intention and surrender, intention and surrender. Because, of course, we're not ever in control of anything, but the way I like to see it is the masculine part of me and the masculine energy in our relationship is about having intention, clear direction, clear goals. And then the feminine part is about being open and flowing and surrendered to life and surrendered to what is happening in the moment. So in that way, we get to have the feminine aspect of feeling and openness and surrender, and then the masculine element of direction and intention, and they both support each other. And then there are times, of course, that we might have specific goals that fall over, and part of life is going, okay, those goals are no longer true for me. What's the next set of goals, or what's the next intention? What's the next part of the journey that we're taking together? So your intention doesn't have to be fixed in stone for the rest of your life or the rest of your relationship. It can be something that you might revisit every year or every 2 years or every 5 years, the same as you would within any business situation. And of course, the values, like for Rod and I, that sense that we both know at the heart of our relationship is our commitment to growth and transformation. And that commitment to growth and transformation comes first. It's like being committed to growth and transformation is what allows me to step into a difficult conversation with Rod and say, something doesn't feel right, because I value the growth and transformation enough to step into those uncomfortable places. So they're really the 3 things I wanted to cover tonight. It's about knowing who you are, accepting the other person, and having an intention for your relationship. I've got a few minutes more, so if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to put your questions and comments into the chat box. If you have an intention for your relationship, then feel free to share what your intention is. I'd love to hear that as well. I've got 2.5 days left in Bali, so I'm making the most of this warm weather here before I head back to Victoria on Thursday. Okay, so it doesn't look like there's any questions. And just to give you, like, with having an intention for your relationship, it might be as simple as to have adventures together. It might be about traveling together. It might be about living a different life. It might be about, creating safety and support for each other. It may be about supporting each other to deepen sexually. So Laura's just asked me of examples of intentions for relationships. I think there's a bit of a delay, so I've just shared some intentions. So hopefully that answers your question, Laura. Also, people may have specific intentions for certain periods of time. So even in this current phase of my relationship with Rod, like, we're putting a lot of energy into supporting the development of our business profiles individually and together. So that's something that's quite active for us at the moment. But say next year, once our business is in a different place, we might have more intention around supporting each other to relax, or supporting each other, around health and fitness. And, with Rod being still recovering from surgery at the moment, there's part of our relationship that is about supporting his health. Stuart says the words he intends are a lot less likely to contribute to beating oneself up than the alternative of I will or I promise. Yeah, that's true. An intention is clear and direct, but it also has a supportive and nourishing quality to it, rather than I should or I will or I have to. So I intend to do this, or we intend to do this, or we intend to grow together, can be a beautiful way of communicating. Melanie is asking, what about if your partner is closing his heart? How can you help then? Really, the answer then, Melanie, is about how you can live your most radiant expression of you. So instead of trying to get him to open his heart, and actually I won't go into it in detail tonight, but Rod and I are releasing some videos soon. It's from the talk we did in Melbourne called Men and Love, where I speak about a period of our relationship where I was in quite a strong vulnerability around love and being open, and Rod not being sure. And it's powerful for a woman to know that she can hold herself in her vulnerability without trying to change where her partner's at. But look out for our Men and Love videos. There's it's a 5-part series that we'll be releasing within the next month. It's a great question, and definitely something that, yeah, I have a lot of information to share, and watch the Men and Love videos when they come out. They will definitely help with that topic, because it's quite an extensive topic. Katie says, thank you, Martina. It's lovely to experience your excitement and vibrancy. Thank you, Katie. Lovely to feel your appreciation. I'm actually feeling a little bit tired on this end of the day. We last night was a little bit unsettled here. We actually had the earthquake, which wasn't big where we are, but we were out for dinner, and I was sitting there saying, oh, the floor's moving underneath us. And yeah, it was the earthquake, so it kind of has left things a little bit unsettled, even though it wasn't big for us. David, says, what if you have different sleep patterns? One is active early and one is active later. Good question, and maybe one we'll save for another session on David. It's about time for me to go and have dinner. Thank you, Laura, for your comment, and thank you, David. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm loving the Monday Night Live. And next week, I'll be back in Victoria with a whole lot more clothes on and the heaters on. And yeah, I will see you again next Monday. Thanks, everyone.